Successful people learn how to make their mind work for them. I'm David Nagel, and this is the Successful Mind Podcast.
Okay, so I want you to think about something. If you look at all the books that have written over the years about success, there's some fantastic information there. And pretty much most of them agree on the major principles. There's a few that don't. That's true. There's a few that don't. But most agree on the major principles of success. And if you go all the way back to the earliest ones, like Think and Grow Rich, stuff like that, we find some very interesting things. That the real solid ones, the ones that were really built on research, and most people they seem to forget this, that Napoleon Hill's was built on the research of interviewing 500 of the most successful people in the world. Not just successful people, 500 of the most successful people in the world. Okay, because he was commissioned by Andrew Carnegie to go do this job over a period of 20 years, delineate what were the major contributing factors to a person's success, and then publish them so all the world would have them and be able to use them in a very great way. And still, like, the things that are in Think and Grow Rich are 100% sound. There's not one thing in there that is really flawed. And the other thing most people don't realize is most of it has been proved by science since then. Like, scientifically, we know this is how the mind works. So here's the deal with this. You have to realize something. If you go back to when we studied U squared, Pritchett, he was talking about making a quantum leap. What were two things that he was constantly repeating in that book? And you might want to read the book again. One, that you're already prepared to make a quantum leap. If you remember that, he kept saying it over and over again. You're already prepared to do this. Now, he doesn't know you from Adam, but he knows human psychology. And he knows that a person that picks up this book wants something. And if a person that wants something, once a person recognizes they want something, they already have the first preparedness part to actually do it. So he knows that. What was the other thing that he was doing in that book? And he was actually doing it in a very gentle way, I think. Out of the thousands of books that I've read, I've seen it across the board. And he's a pretty gentle guy. But what he was saying was, you got to do something that you're not doing now. You got to reverse your rules. You got to think differently. You got to get outside of the box. You have to lead with different parts. Instead of leading with the head, you got to lead with the heart. You got to change your rules for success, right? How many people do you think read that book and they're like, oh, this is an awesome book, and they put it down and they don't do anything in the book because their mind is programmed that if they read it, they know it? You have to remember something. The way that we were taught by the educational system is not the way that you need to learn to become successful. Because the educational system didn't teach you how to become successful. Nobody ever became successful coming out of the educational system. They became successful when they had to go out in the world and adjust their knowledge and turn it into action. Think about that. Think about that. We may have a storehouse of knowledge, but what do we apply it to? What do we apply it to? You know, they want to send kids, like, it's really interesting. They keep pushing this idea. We need to send kids to college. Like, everybody needs to go to at least community college. What the hell are we going to do with that when we come out? There's not a job on the planet that you can get with community college that community college prepares you for. Nothing. Nothing. It's read, remember, repeat. Think about your schooling. It was read, remember, repeat. And if they said if you could repeat it back to them, you knew it, you got the grade, you went to the next level. So it is ingrained in our psyche that learning means reading, remembering, repeating. But we completely lose track of the idea that there's absolutely no effect. Nothing changed. I read this book, nothing changed. Because we have not realized that in order to get our brains to grow to the next level of effectiveness, we've got to do something very different. And that's what I want to teach you today. It's not complicated. I figured this out when I didn't know anything. And I didn't even know that that's what I had done. I had two major breakthroughs in my life that I followed exactly what I'm going to do today. And it totally changed everything for me. One was when I was on the forklift and it tripled my income. And the second time was when I was in my business. And I turned my annual income into a monthly income and then took it over $1 million. When I started my business, I really knew nothing. I had a more than ordinary knowledge of the laws of the universe and what I was teaching, but I didn't know anything about running a business. I really didn't. I knew a lot about the petroleum business, but I didn't know anything about this business. And it's not even close to apples to apples. Very, very different industry. So it didn't even wash over. I had to learn everything as I went. And the relationship I was in at the time, I had a deal with that person that I would, if I went 1 month and I did not get the amount that we needed to pay the bills, I would quit and go back to work. Now, what's going on here? Number one, in order to make a decision, when you're married, you've got 4 kids, you've got all the trappings of that, all the blessings of that also, really have no savings at that time to just quit your job one day and start a business the next day. $5,000 in the bank, no other investment money. You're going to bootstrap the thing. You have to be able to learn on the fly. You've got to be able to learn on the fly, meaning you got to put yourself out there and be willing to do whatever it takes. But here's something that's very interesting. One of the greatest stories that successful people tell that have ever read Think and Grow Rich and applied it to their own life is this one. This is the one that you hear the most. Burn the ships. In the 30 years that I've been reading, well, over 30 years now that I've been reading that book and listening to other people talk about their stories and their associations with that book, it's the number one thing you hear from business people that read that book. Burning the ships. It was the number one lesson because it was about making the decision to just cast the past behind and move forward like a freight train and not look back. Now, in the book, it's the reason they did that was an army went to an island and they were going to fight an opponent. And when the general found out that his people didn't know if they were going to live or not, he was like, screw you, burn the ships. We either die, there's no retreat. We either die or win. That's it. There's no retreat. So in the idea of this, in that complete idea, something magnificent had to happen. What happened? How do you go from wherever you are to winning instead of dying? You push yourself into that position and your brain does something magnificent. It grows, it learns, it adapts, it adjusts, it becomes better. But there's some key components to this. For it to work in a really great way in your life, you have to do it voluntarily. Can it work if it's non-voluntary? Yeah, it can. It can. Many people have been pushed into situations that are just horrific situations and they made it work. I mean, there's a great example. Read Viktor Frankl, A Man's Search for Meaning. Like a concentration camp is probably one of the worst things that I can think of in my mind. And Frankl figured out how to do it in a concentration camp. However, if we consistently go through our day, and this is why most people fail. And I'm talking about most people that try to become successful. They go through their day and they're battling the biggest enemy they have is themselves. And they're losing the battle. They're losing the battle because they don't understand that the way that their mind works needs to change in order for them to become successful. And they're trying to work with it instead of changing it. You have to ask yourself, for both of those columns that you wrote yesterday, the getting yourself to do it and whatever it is that you have to do, are you trying to work with your mind or are you trying to change it? Are you trying to get it to adapt and move to the next level so that you can become better? Because if you don't do that, every new level that you have to go to, think about this. Would you take a third grader and put him in junior year of high school? How well would they do? Not well. Because their brain has not grown. They have not learned to be able to deal with that. If we don't consistently grow, what happens? Everything is difficult. We don't understand why we're not moving forward. Things come to a standstill. Then our behavior starts to follow. I don't feel like doing it. Every time I do this, I get a bad result. The key is, though, is that when we put ourselves in that situation and we do it from this perspective, I want to. I absolutely want to. I want to. If I want to do that, and I put myself in that situation, my brain grows the right way because I want to. And if I'm holding the vision of where I want to go, if I believe that that's what I'm going to become, that's what my brain adapts to. It adapts to those demands. I'm putting myself in the situation and I believe. So it has a target to shoot for. It's like, we have to become this. They have interviewed and researched so many successful people to try to find out what is it that's actually going on in the brains of these magnificently talented individuals. Is this some kind of talent they're born with, or is this something that anybody can do? And they found out that it's something that anybody can do, and if they put themselves under the right stressors, their brain grew the right way. One of the things was that they went full on into what it is that they wanted to do, and number two, they held the belief they were going to become the thing to become. And they worked through the struggle of becoming that. But now the brain's got a target to shoot for. If I hold an image of myself being successful and I'm working at getting there, my brain is constantly adapting, trying to find a way, how do I get to this image? If I'm holding an image from my past, it keeps trying to pull me and find ways in the things that I'm doing that don't verify the image. So here's the 3 beliefs. I'm going to give you 3 beliefs that you have to have. And if you don't have them, you can change them. You can make these beliefs today, okay? Number 1, I must change. Number 2, I must change it. And number 3, I can change it. These apply to both scenarios, getting yourself to do it and whatever else you have to learn. Remember, when I started, I didn't know anything. I had to use these 3 things, and I did unconsciously. I didn't know what I was doing with them, to everything. And that means I had to adapt and grow into everything that I was doing. Don't think that I'm any different than you, because I'm absolutely not. Remember, I quit high school because it was like I couldn't even get myself to do my homework. For 2 years, I didn't even go to school. They didn't even know I wasn't there. It was kind of interesting. The shock on their face when they found out. Anyway, that's a different story. But if you put yourself in this situation, everything starts to change because your brain has to adapt to this change. Now, in order to do this, we have to do something called, we have to get leverage over ourselves. Leverage is this. Leverage is what Pritchett was talking about. In order to make that happen, there's a few things that we have to do. First, we have to want to. I can't make you want to. You have to want to for your reasons. But I will tell you this, if you keep thinking about your past, if you keep thinking about the thought that's running around in your mind, if you keep thinking to yourself that if I just keep unpacking it, something's going to change, you're deluding yourself. It won't. Because every time you go over an old story in your mind, you make it stronger. Not only do you make it stronger, you take a little bit away from it and you add a little bit more information to it. We know as a scientific fact that if you take a person who's got a story that's 20 years old and you look at the story versus the reality of what the story was, it had changed significantly in the person's mind. And they were the one that made a change. You're already in your house. Stop unpacking. Stop unpacking. Don't unpack your past and litter your house. Start putting good stuff in your house. Okay? So I'm serious. I'm really serious, because this really comes down to a hard decision that you're making for yourself. Okay, here's the next thing. The areas where you have to have leverage, okay? Leverage meaning that I need to get leverage on myself to do this. Number 1, I have to see my outcome. I have to know my outcome. We've talked about that before. Know your outcome. I have to see where I'm going. I have to give my mind a target to shoot for. This I will become. Whatever this is, I will become this. Mind, body, and nervous system have to all get in alignment. Mind, body, and nervous system. So the thoughts that I think, the energy in my body, my emotions, and I have to wire it to my nervous system. I can, I must, and I will. I can, I must, and I will. Change it. I can, I must, and I will. I must, I will, and I can. It's only the hard part if you sit down. It's only the hard part if you sit down, don't do anything with it. When I first started doing this, if a thought entered my mind about why I couldn't, I would jump up and I would do some version of I can, I must, I will, and I would walk around the house and I would get myself in a high intense state. That's how you change your nervous system, because your nervous system responds to that demand. It literally grows new nerve cells. It wraps new myelin around those connections. It becomes stronger, and it happens instantaneously as you do it. If you just sit there and you think to yourself, shit, I don't feel like doing this today. This sucks. Why am I doing this anyway? And you start running these old patterns in your mind, you're doing the same thing because you have a level of intensity that we do that story with. You're making that stronger. So when you jump up out of your chair and you get intense about where you're going, it was almost, if you treated it almost like as if there was a person standing in front of you, an opponent that was saying, you can't do this. And you were like getting in their face, like, I can, I will, I must, get out of here. I'm not listening to you. And you did that with constant regularity. Your mind literally adapts to that. It literally adapts to that. You become better, you become stronger. And this is the part that previously people kind of has chalked up to mostly more of a spiritual experience, but we actually know it starts with a physiological change. As that grows, you become more aware of things that are around you that you weren't aware of before. And it's a bizarre experience when that happens on a quantum leap level. It really is. The first time I experienced it, I could not believe it. How could my income triple? How could I be a high school dropout, be on a forklift, and my income triple instantaneously? How can that possibly? How can that even be? Because I did this exact thing on the forklift, and it changed in 30 days. I did this when I got in my business. And my income went from $50,000 a year to $50,000 a month, and then it went over $1 million, but I did it constantly putting myself out there where I absolutely have to adapt to the change. If we don't put ourselves in the place where we have to adapt and keep ourselves there, we go backwards, period. There is no in between. Last piece. You have to link in your mind intense pain to losing. Intense, unbelievable pain in your mind to losing, to not getting what you want. I could not think of anything worse in my life than me not going out and at least trying, at least trying to live my dream. I could not think of anything worse. And I also linked incredible pleasure to getting there. The image in my mind was amazing, this image that I had in my mind. Because if there's not pain in the idea of you quitting or staying the same, you will stay right where you are. So you should make a list of all the horrible things that will come from you not doing it. And then build an image of yourself, because when you build the image, it's also physiological. You're giving your brain the model to look at, to create. It starts to become that image. And we know that from like all great sports players and musicians and actors and artists and all different kinds of people. The image that they hold in their mind, they become, but they don't let go of the image. And they put themselves out there on the edge of it every single day. Listen to this again, apply it, because if you don't apply it, nothing will change. If you just listen to it and you're like, that's cool, that's interesting, nothing will change. You actually have to apply it. If you apply it, you'll all have a quantum leap in a short period of time.
Thanks for listening to the Successful Mind podcast. And if you like what you heard and you want to know more, Go to davidnagel.com/free stuff.